I'm Asha Bhalsod. I'm the founder of Utopia Consultancy. I have been in the Amazon space over the last 15 years, and I have been closely working in the toy sector for the last 12 years. Welcome to our first episode of our podcast. I'd like to welcome our first guest, Stacy Hunt, who is the head of e-commerce for Moose Toys and has been with them for the last 14 years.
As you said, I've been at Moose Toys now for about 14 years. I've been in the toy industry actually now for just over 20 years. I started life back in retail and worked as a buyer in kind of traditional retail roles, and then transitioned across into product development and then into sales, but I've always kind of been in the toy space. And then e-commerce specifically is something that I've kind of gravitated up towards, I guess, and my experience has sort of built over the past 10 years or so now into the role that I'm currently in at Moose. I guess I kind of started to move and focus more in this area, but it's really been about recognizing Amazon and e-commerce as initially, I guess, a growth opportunity, something that was growing really rapidly that I could kind of get my teeth into. But then actually, when you start to dig a bit deeper, it's understanding all of the differences, challenges, nuances. And I think that's the bit that made it exciting for me and kind of why I've stayed in this path, I guess, ever since.
You say challenges, and we're going to be talking about some of them. So I want to start by actually saying, I've been in this space for such a long time, and I find it rare to find somebody that's equally been in this space for the same amount of time. What drew you to this category and the e-commerce channel specifically?
Yeah, so toys I sort of fell into. I guess a lot of people kind of fall into one kind of space or another. And it was really just an opportunity. I'd kind of come out of university, started working in retail head office, and an opportunity was there in toys. Sounded quite interesting. But then I've kind of developed like a real passion for toys and the toy industry and the product, and how diverse it is, how fast moving it is, how trend led it is. So I guess that's what's kept me in toys. I think from an e-commerce in particular point of view, kind of, as I mentioned, it's how, again, different and dynamic and fast paced that it is. I think it gives me the opportunity, being kind of, I guess, slightly selfish, in kind of constantly learning and constantly kind of scratching that itch, I guess, to just understand new things all the time.
Yeah, and I absolutely echo those sentiments. So let's take it really back. Let's take it back to the mid-2000s. Amazon started off as a really small retailer that was only in some categories, and the evolution of kind of how it got into the toy space. At that time, if we look at the retail landscape, we had the giants like Toys R Us and Argos dominating this category. How did Amazon first start positioning itself in the toy category? And how do they compare to those other retailers?
Yeah, so this was kind of around about the start of, I guess, my journey as well in kind of the toy space. So I remember Amazon coming in and starting to be a disruptor, but as you said, they were quite small at the time, focused on other categories, not really toys so much. And I guess my earliest memories of them really starting to drive the whole marketplace piece and segment. But it was at the time like a real disruptor. There were clear differences and against kind of the more traditional retailer. And that kind of just built and built and built and built over the kind of, I guess, mid 2000s, from 2005-6 up to probably 2010, 2012, around about that time. So it's all of the things that Amazon is known for and kind of leans into most heavily now. So it's the assortment and the breadth of range that they've got. It's the convenience, it's the price, it's things like reviews and how transparent all of that kind of piece is. And that was very different, I guess, to what was out there traditionally at retail at the time. It was store-based retail or catalogue-based retail, and didn't allow for that same level of either assortment because of physical space, or visibility of reviews. Pricing wasn't quite as dynamic as it is nowadays, and Amazon obviously led the way in that. So I think there were some clear differences, and like I said, it's all of the things Amazon are known for now. They haven't really fundamentally changed their overall strategy. You know, all of the things that they focus on and they're really good at is what they entered the market with, 20 years ago, and disrupted the whole kind of category.
And we talk about challenges, but like you'll remember the time, Stacey, where you just set up a product and just sold, right? And
Yeah.
that was the magic of that retailer and how everyone's businesses grew so rapidly. But there were early challenges, and let's talk about some of them. What do you reckon were the early challenges that toy businesses and brands faced when they were managing Amazon back then?
Yeah, I think initially there was a lot of because it was so different and so disruptive, it was a big step change in just trying to understand how to deal with it. I think initially in the very early days, there was probably a bit of a lack of control as well on Amazon about how brands were represented, what stuff looked like, unauthorized sellers on there, counterfeit product on there. So I think the whole marketplace offering actually created some challenges for how brands actually use that and navigated their way through that. But brands were very used to dealing with a piece of packaging and communicating to customer off of a shelf and what that looked like, or even off of a catalog, but that was just one image and a short description, and then suddenly they're in this huge marketplace, lots of competition, lots of products. They have to work in a different way to stand out. Search became extremely important, which wasn't as much of a factor before. And then I think, there's other things that, again, Amazon are known for now, and kind of we mentioned the convenience piece a second ago, but, how Amazon and their demands from a logistical point of view and a fulfillment point of view, it's all stuff that traditional brands hadn't had to deal with in the past. And I think fundamentally they had to learn very, very quickly about the differences between Amazon and how they operate versus traditional retail. And I think, a lot of them were quite probably a little bit frightened by that, and also a little bit hesitant to damage the relationship with some of those traditional retailers that they'd served for, decades. So I think it was an understanding thing and a very steep learning curve for a lot of brands.
I remember sat in a traditional sales and marketing meeting where Amazon was always crucified on pricing.
Yeah.
And you've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I remember there was a decision made where a certain brand was going to not trade with Amazon for the first 6 months of new products, and another channel was going to get those products. Ironically, that strategy changed very quickly within the first 3 months because they weren't able to see the sales that they had forecasted for, and there was a lot of stock sitting in the warehouse. At what place did you see that the Amazon marketplace model really started to take off for the toy businesses, and those type of strategies were destined for failure for that brand and for that product?
Yeah, I think it's probably about 10 years or so ago now. I'd say kind of depending on how early brands started really engaging with Amazon, anywhere from kind of 2010, 12 up to kind of 2015, 2016. Certainly from, my transition across to sales and starting on that journey from a sales point of view, like even at that early day, so 10 years or so ago now, like we were engaging with Amazon, but it was certainly not anywhere near what it is now, and there was still quite a lot of those sorts of discussions happening even then about the best way to protect other retailers or launch strategies or whatever else it might be. So yeah, I'd say it really started to take off around 10 years ago from my experience.
And then I remember when Prime became such a big thing and such the norm. And I remember this like it was yesterday when I came home and I told my husband that we're going to pay for a subscription and this is what we're going to do because I worked for Amazon at the time. And he was
Yeah.
like, absolutely not. And, fast forward 15 years later, he's the one that's paying for that subscription and has for many years. I think Prime systematically changed the way that we all shopped, but quite specifically the impact in the toy category, I think it's been great. So, in your opinion, how would you reckon Amazon Prime and one day delivery has impacted the toy sales, and especially at peak in quarter 4 and the gifting season?
Yeah, I think it's had a huge impact. I think the customer's expectation of, what delivery looks like, how quick delivery can be, how they shop has fundamentally been changed by Amazon and Amazon Prime, being able to order something and get it next day or even in a couple of days, back in
Yeah.
at the start of it was completely different to what we'd seen before. And I think one of the big shifts that then we've seen is actually that last minute impulse shopping, from an ecom point of view and an Amazon point of view now is suddenly like massive compared to where it
And
was
later
before.
and
So
later, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
Christmas, you can buy all your Christmas presents a few days before Christmas with the confidence that actually Amazon will still be able to deliver it to you within a couple of days as a promise. And I think that's changed how people shop. Every year we hear that Christmas is getting later and later and later. It's always the same date, but I think people's expectations and the way that they shop and how they can get stuff delivered to home without even leaving the house, particularly when a lot of people are so time poor as well. I think now, not having to go out to store to find something last minute, you can just sit in your spare time, in the evenings or, after work or whatever, and do your Christmas shopping and get it delivered within a couple of days. I think has fundamentally changed how people shop.
And how nervous is it for sales managers that are sitting and waiting for those
Yeah,
Amazon
yeah.
purchase orders to come through?
Yeah, 100%. That's been a big shift change as well, just about holding your nerve, understanding that Amazon's demand driven and that it's not going to come through in an early PO, much earlier in the season and then sit on stock. I think it's fundamentally changed how brands and suppliers have to work with Amazon and hold stock levels as much as it's impacted, obviously, how the consumer is shopping nowadays.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. We were internally this earlier today talking about actually the evolution of Amazon, but how much it's fundamentally changed with with the rise of social commerce as well, in particular. And we were talking about how actually, if you look at the toy category, it's so trend led, it's so license driven, it's so movie dependent sometimes that it almost doesn't fit Amazon as a retailer. Amazon as a retailer, and it's all about feeding that Amazon algorithm and ensuring that flywheel's forever moving.
Mm.
How do you reckon toy companies and brands need to adapt those strategies then to evolve into that way of working?
I think it's again just embracing what it can do. So looking at the opportunities and the positives that can be brought by that kind of thing. So, it just means that there's an awful lot more focus and importance that needs to be put on um, the launch timing, the content that you've got, how good it is, what's happening across social. I think being in tune with social and the conversation that's happening out there as well, and just remaining relevant is really important. But I think one thing that Amazon has done is for lots of brands, big and small, is it's made it much easier actually for them to launch products and brands that might be more trend led. So although it's slightly counterintuitive to, I guess, Amazon's model, like you said, of algorithms and rankings and everything else, actually what it does mean is if consumers are looking for something or there's a conversation about something or a movie out there, it allows for that product to be there at the right time, with great content, as long as you're engaging with Amazon and delivering kind of the basics. I think it actually does allow for that discoverability to happen. In the past, you'd
Yeah,
have had to plan that months and months and months in advance and get retailer selections and listings and make sure it's on a shelf in the right place at the right time. I
yeah.
think actually Amazon's made that barrier to entry, I guess, much smaller. It's made it easier to get stuff there at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I want to take it back to, talking about that whole Christmas is getting later.
Mm.
Um, Black Friday. We cannot avoid having this discussion without talking about Black Friday and Prime Day actually.
Yeah.
Now we've both in our 15 odd years seen the evolution of Black Friday and Prime Day and the disruption that it causes in the toy market. In your opinion, do you think that the toy category has a right to win in deal events such as Prime Day specifically?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's become a key date within the calendar. I think it's become an important point of the year. I think it does a few things as well. As much as it can drive sales and huge spikes in a relatively short space of time, it also can help, boost product discoverability,
Yeah.
boost rankings afterwards, which we see. You run something on promotion through these deal events, it gets huge traffic and coverage at that time, and then it has a benefit to that product in the longer term. So I think, used in the right way, they're actually really, really beneficial. I think as well, although, it drives sales for, like I said, a huge spike in a relatively short space of time, you can run these then short, sharp bursts of activity rather than having to commit to 3-4 week kind of deals and promotions. So again, I think it's just become part of our everyday kind of promotional and deal planning throughout the year now. And I think it's, used in the right way, I think it can be a really powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And we're talking about, getting your products up in rankings and the importance of, how do we build that? A+ content, again, I remember sitting and educating marketing departments on the importance of A+ content. I look at A+ content now and it's just the norm. It's a brilliant basic. It's a tick box that you have to do. So in your opinion, what role does A+ content, videos and reviews play in conversations, with your marketing teams that you have now, versus what you had to do and educate them 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think what you touched on there is absolutely right. It's become the brilliant basics. It's become the standard for what good looks like in terms of the ticking those boxes from a content point of view. I think all of those things play a really important role for Amazon and e-commerce in general. We talked about the shift from a consumer in terms of, how they shop and engage with brands in store or in catalog versus on Amazon. And I think one of the things that the thing that all of those kind of key things, A+ content, video, reviews, play is giving the consumer more confidence and more information for them to be able to essentially convert and make a choice on whether they're purchasing into your brand and that product or not. So it's absolutely become the standard now across all of the products and brands. Certainly from what we launch, everything now has to go through a process of making sure we've got really good video, really good content, really good titles, really good A+, making sure we're building reviews early as much as we can. So all of that stuff just gives consumers confidence and trust in your brand.
And as a founder of an agency, I often get asked a question, which is, how do I win on Amazon? And I repeat, we've both been doing this for the same amount of years. You do it for one brand, I've done it for multiple brands. If a brand came to you today and asked you for one piece of advice and said, how do we in 2025 and beyond win in Amazon, what bit of advice would you give them?
It seems really kind of, I guess, obvious and basic, but it is those things we've been talking about. It's not underestimating how important content is and those building blocks. I think there's a danger that you want to just list something and then hope that some organic sales will come because people will find your product, and absolutely they won't unless you're investing in the right things. So invest in content, invest in video, invest in reviews, and then make sure once you've got all of those building blocks really, really good, that then you are actively driving consumers and traffic to your product pages. It's the fundamentals, and I think there's sort of no point in investing or spending in another area until you've got those brilliant basics right.
Absolutely agree with you. It's interesting how many toy brands forget that it's your job to drive
Yeah,
traffic
yeah.
onto your own product pages. It sometimes
And
does make me surprised.
yeah, and I think that's one of the big mindset changes with Amazon
Yeah,
versus another retailer.
absolutely.
Like at Amazon, us as brand owners are responsible for driving the sales and the visibility and the traffic of our brands, not Amazon. Whereas at other retailers, the to a certain extent, they have a vested interest because of the way that the model works to drive the product category. Whereas the onus is absolutely on us as brand owners to do that with Amazon.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So, one follow-up question from that is, where do you think Amazon is headed in the next 5 years, specifically in the toy category? And what do you think will be the biggest challenges for toy brands to continue to have some growth in this with this retailer specifically?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of bits which sort of really interest me that I'm keen to kind of see where it goes and develops from an Amazon point of view. I think personalization and getting even more personal and specific results when you're looking for product on site will continue to grow. And I think AI, it's a huge topic of conversation everywhere at the moment, but it will
Yes.
absolutely play into how people discover products and brands on Amazon. So I think that's one area where it will become much more intuitive. I think there'll be things changing at real time rather than, waiting for it to go through algorithms and things. I think it will. I think it will start to make it a much more personal and specific journey for customers. The other area is around subscription and toy rental. I think it's a really interesting space. I don't think it will have as big an impact as AI and personalization, but I think just that, more budget conscious, more eco-friendly piece will continue to gain some traction over the coming years. I think as a new generation of adults kind of start to move into this space, I think that will become important for them.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely agree. I think the AI piece that you're talking about is tremendous. Like we see
yeah,
everybody now using, ChatGPT for writing
yeah.
content, but that's going to evolve. That's going to change. It's how do you stay on top ahead of the curve on some of those aspects?
Yeah, definitely. And I think and I think, to your question about how can brands, continue to win in this space, I think it is about it, it's all the things that have been happening with Amazon over, certainly my journey with them over the last 10 years or so. It's about just making sure that you're engaging with these new things as they come through. You're on top of trends. You're looking at how you need to change and tweak things to make sure that you've got the best representation of your brand or product on site. So I think it's just continuing to do all of that. It will continue to change which things you need to focus and look on other than these kind of brilliant basics. But it's about just making sure that you're continuing to engage in all of these opportunities as they come along.
So, final question. If you had to look back at your career and the evolution of Amazon, the toy category in the Amazon space, what's the one bit of advice you would give your younger self again?
I think it would be just to stay curious with Amazon and try and understand how Amazon works versus trying to kind of take a more traditional understanding of how retail works and try
I
and
love
apply the
that.
same logic. I think
Yeah.
it's about being really open to the fact that it's different and you need to behave in a slightly different way to get the best out of it. That would be my biggest advice to me, to my younger self, or anyone else kind of, that's starting on that journey with Amazon, is just to be really open to being different and working in a slightly different way with Amazon to get the best out of it.
Yeah, absolutely love that. Um, Thank you very much, Stacey. It's been absolutely great talking to you about the evolution of Amazon in the toy space, and I look forward to speaking to you once again.